Hello, everyone. This is the weekly Business Performance USA webinar, and we are really looking forward to today because we get to hear more about background screening. In fact, today marks, really we should have opened the champagne because today marks month 12 that Track One has joined us for these webinars every single month and given us so much great information on background screening. So it's a really big day for us to have welcomed them for this long. Great volunteer executives who are giving us lots and lots of great information for companies to really know and understand about background screening. So let me tell you a little bit about Business Performance USA. We do produce these weekly webinars, and we always have them on Tuesdays at noon Central to provide a variety of business insights on all kinds of topics that are important to business professionals. We are a voluntary association, and we provide this online business information exchange. When you become a member, you can meet people from across the states and be engaged in business conversations on all kinds of topics that are important to your workplace. And you can become a member at no cost and engage anytime you want. Just go to businessperformanceusa.org. One of the many benefits that you will be able to have is to watch any of our on-demand webinars that we have presented now for more than a year. So we welcome you, and we hope that you'll sign up. And our webinar today is going deeper with background screening. Let me introduce myself. I'm Cynthia Stewart. I'm managing partner with Evermore Services, and I'm your partner in building tomorrow's businesses today. And I'll be hosting this hour with Nancy. Nancy is your executive presenter, and I'll be introducing her in a minute. But first, let me let you know that to make this hour worth your time, you are more than welcome to go ahead and type in your questions using the question feature on your dashboard. And also, if you do have any specific workplace issues, you can always send an email to me, Cynthia at businessperformanceusa.org, and I will be happy to answer those questions or to put you in touch with one of our executive volunteers. So we encourage you to go ahead and post your questions, and we hope that you know that we are all ears and that you have an expert today. So anything you have questions on, especially during her presentation, go ahead and post that question. Now, one more thing, this webinar is being recorded, so you will have the opportunity to go ahead and watch all of these different webinars that Nancy and Matt have been presenting here this last year. And in a moment, after I introduce Nancy and she gets started, she'll give you a flavor of all the different topics that they have covered. So let me now turn and talk with you about Nancy Lynn Roberts. Nancy is owner of Track One, a professional accredited background screening firm. Nancy is also nationally accredited, as well as her firm, with the National Association for Background Screeners. And she is a very active leader in that organization and has been since 2005. And she currently serves as the chair of the National Accreditation Program for U.S.-based background screening firms. And if you have listened very often to find out, or if you have participated at all in background screening, you know that there are lots of things to know and understand about your screening partner. And Nancy and Matt have given lots of information about how to do the screening well and how to comply with the rules and regulations, as well as those guidelines from the EEOC. Nancy really has served in a variety of different organizations and currently serves as the chief operations officer for her company. She's been a compliance professional, a risk manager, and an educated business attorney since 1992 with specific and long-term industry experience in entrepreneurial endeavors, healthcare, nonprofit and for-profit, staffing, employment, background screening, of course, and technology. And she has an established record of reducing or managing risk for both entrepreneurial and established companies, and has built from the ground up comprehensive compliance programs and processes for large multi-corporate systems and small businesses alike. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and pass the baton over to Nancy. I'm going to change the presenter to you, Nancy, and I'll let you know when I see your screen.
We're working on it. One moment.
Okay, it's there. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and mute, Nancy.
All right, sounds great. Thank you, Cynthia. Well, first of all, welcome to everybody. Track One really has been so pleased to participate in the Business Performance USA efforts. We believe in educating our clients and really just educating the general public about background screening, both the value of background screening as well as some of the nuances that can raise questions and concerns for people when they don't know a lot about what background screening does or how it works. In summation, we have been doing, as Cynthia said, a 12-year series or 12-month series of topics, and I think that we started last September talking about statistics on how background screening is used today. We moved into what a user of consumer reports or background screening reports should know and consider. Went from there into designing the best program for background screening and having the right mindset. Went from there into evaluating your screening program for basic Fair Credit Reporting Act compliance. Got a little bit deeper into evaluating your screening program in January, and then even talked about creating a background screening checklist for your clients. And from there, we went into providing kind of 10 power background screening tips that most of our clients, it would be like the top 10 questions our clients have either asked or have had us answer for them. And then from there, we went into sort of more depth of those top 10 screening tips. From there, we talked about the EEOC and how they have revised the criminal enforcement guidance in 2012 and what that means for employers. And then we moved into really looking at various background screening products and tools to start educating our clients and our friends through BPUSA on how to look at your products and know if you're getting what you need to get in the way of information and quality information so that you can engage in quality decision making. So the first effort at looking at the products was in June of this year, and we talked about name matching, steps to know that you have the right applicant in front of you and steps that you can follow to make sure that you're getting information about that particular applicant. A lot of information, a lot of reports and information come back with the same name, but maybe there aren't other identifiers that tie to that individual. How do you know what to do when you have name match only results? Then we moved into quality decisions for individualized assessments. That really tied back to the revised EEOC enforcement guidance, but we went through just some practical things that you can do to implement individualized assessments as a part of your background screening program as you're hiring people. And that leads us into today's webinar. Today's webinar is really about going deeper. And our focus for our clients and for anyone listening to this webinar today is really to help you identify if the products and the tools that you're using are really giving you the quality of search that you're looking for. In every industry, in every company, and in every business decision, there are three things that you have to take into consideration: price, quality, and service. And those three things, you never have a high price, a high quality, and high service. You never have a low price with high quality and high service. So, you have to really consider what price you're willing to pay, because your price is going to affect the quality that you receive. So this webinar is designed to help you start looking at the price you're paying, the tools you're getting for that price, and what you could do to improve the quality without killing your budget. And you know, for every company, that risk assessment is different. But hopefully by the end of this, you will see at least one major area related to criminal searches that you could improve on quality, and you know, definitely improve the results on the information that you're getting. So with that, we'll move into going a little bit deeper into the ocean of background screening. I think the first thing we need to understand is why going deeper might matter to you. So many clients, when they're thinking about background screening, think that if they stick in a name, they will get the same result, no matter what company they're going to, no matter what products they're requesting. And that simply is not true. So background screening is complicated, and it involves a lot of factors. And some of the factors relate to what information you give us so that we can do an effective background check. But one of the factors is, what information are you asking us to search? What products are we actually providing to you? What types of searches are we delivering to you? So understanding those searches is really an important part of making sure that you're going deep enough to get the information you want. You know, I liken it to you hear about police departments trying to find maybe a missing body, and as they look across a huge, vast acreage, miles and miles of acreage, trying to find that missing person, you know, they try to target their search in areas where they believe that person last was. And really, when we talk about a criminal background check, the same concept holds true. We have certain products, and the greatest example of those would be, for example, the multi-state criminal products that you hear, multi-jurisdictional criminal products that you hear companies talk about. We call our product the broad screen. Those national, some people call it a national criminal search, but those criminal databases are in large part that broad, across the top of the field search to see if there's anything that sticks out and looks like a problem. What you need to understand about those looking down from the top searches is that you're really only getting information from any jurisdictions that are actually effectively and in a timely manner electronically reporting their criminal convictions and other criminal records in an electronic format that is able to be dumped on a regular, repeated basis into a database and then searched. So if you have a jurisdiction that is not electronically reporting their data, you have a hole in that database. If you have a jurisdiction that is on some sort of budgetary constraint and they have furloughed half of their workers, as we've seen happen across the country in our courthouses over the past few years as states have really struggled financially, then the records that typically are input into the system and put in a timely fashion maybe aren't getting put in a timely fashion. And so then you have some holes in your national multi-state criminal search or criminal database information. So there are a lot of human factors, there are a lot of electronic resource factors that can impact the quality of search that a large, broad, national or multi-state database search can give to you. It doesn't mean that that's not a good search to run. It is a good search to run, but there are large holes in that search, no matter what company you're working with and no matter what source you're using. And we'll talk in a little bit about, in fact, FBI records, because there's a lot of myths about the quality of fingerprinting or FBI records. But in short, those are the holes that exist in one of those large multi-state database searches. So what we really talk about is how can you target specific risk areas where you know an individual has worked or lived and dig deeper from a criminal research standpoint in those geographic regions or geographic locations and see what you can find out that you might not find out with that broader search. And again, that's the same kind of mindset that you know, our any sort of police department uses, or you know, federal agency would use when they're looking to locate information about someone. So we're talking about targeted digging and filling in the gaps in information, going beyond electronic reporting, and diving in and getting information that you otherwise can't see through a national criminal database type search or multi-state criminal database type search. So that is a good summary of why going deeper really matters to you as a client. The deeper you can go in the targeted areas, the more effective your dollars are being put to use, and the higher likelihood that you'll uncover information that's going to be relevant to your quality decision making. So I think one of the first things that you want to do when you're thinking about going deeper is to start just with a review of your own goals. Most of our clients tell us that their overarching goal is that they're trying to identify character traits that are exhibited via criminal conduct. And those character traits are typically, obviously, traits that they are not interested in bringing into the culture of their organization, either through employees or through volunteers or contractors. They don't want those kinds of character traits to be exhibited by the people that are representing them as a company. And again, all of this is premised on the idea that the people that we hire, the people that are operating or working on behalf of our organizations, how they behave, the character traits they show are a reflection of our companies. So if that is, in fact, the overarching goal, you know, the idea behind that goal really is that we as a company are wanting to establish a corporate culture that steers away from high-risk, unsafe, dangerous, harmful, destructive, or criminal behaviors. Now, the positive or flip side of that underlying thinking behind using background screening and going deeper is that we really, our high-level goal in doing background screening is we want to create a team of people and a corporate culture that is vibrant, that's happy, that's safe, that's healthy, that has a mindset that's going to propel our organization in the direction we want it to go. So, you know, it's all about defining the culture that you as an organization want, defining what kind of character traits you don't want in your company, and that's different for every organization. And then identifying what kind of searches you need to do in order to identify and pick the right candidates for your company. So when we look at some of those broad search tools that we talked about, one of the things I thought that would be helpful is if we talk about some of the myths that are associated with these multi-state national criminal database type searches. So one of the first myths that we hear all the time is our clients will say, I really believe that everything I need to know is going to be provided to me through a national multi-state database search or an FBI fingerprint search. And if I order that search, then I'm going to find out any kind of criminal record that there is on that person, because that is the broadest search there is. It'll tell me everything I need to know. Well, that just is absolutely a myth. And Track One has always been about delivering truth so that we can transform the way that our clients and people think about background screening, and even about people that have a criminal background. Some criminal background reports result in, you know, one of the best kind of employees you can have, because you find someone who's an overcomer. So the fact that someone has a criminal background does not mean that they are not someone you want to hire. It just means that you need to dig in and ask some questions and understand where they are in their overcoming process. But all that, let me set that aside and go back to the client myth. Because we like to uncover the truth and really help people transform their companies and even help consumers and people transform their lives, we just have to say that the belief that one search will give you everything there is to know simply is a myth. There is no single criminal product search anywhere in this country at any company that will deliver all possible criminal reports. And I will say that that includes an FBI search, a fingerprint search, or any kind of search that goes through the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI will tell you that they have about 50% inaccuracies. I've heard as low as 40%. I think the most recent report that they've provided indicates more of a 50% number, but half of the information that makes a report accurate is missing from their databases. So there is no perfect national or multi-state criminal product out there. So the more types of searches that you run, the more you will find. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to overcome that client myth and what kind of products are going to be very helpful to you as you start to consider, how can I go deeper? I referenced the fingerprint search using the FBI or state bureaus. It's so surprising to us when we see more and more state legislatures pass laws that mandate an FBI search for educators, for vulnerable populations. Again, because we believe and we know by the FBI's own accounts that the inaccuracy of those searches is tremendous, and that alone, that product alone, standing alone, is not enough. The other thing about fingerprint searches and FBI searches is that they are not FCRA compliant, and what that means is that it really can restrict the amount of, there is no restriction on the information that's provided. Now, that may mean that you go back farther, you see convictions from further back, and there are some pluses to that. The downsides to that is that the information contained may not have been updated, may not be completely accurate, and so more digging typically has to be done to know what the current outcome and status of a particular conviction or a particular arrest is, to know if it's something that's going to be relevant to your decision making. There are a lot of industries that are requiring FBI or fingerprint searches as a state mandated search, but there is no question that that search alone is not enough to give a company everything they need to really protect their people and make quality decisions or onboarding decisions. So in addition to those multi-state searches, one of the things that we see people miss a lot is looking for criminal records from federal courts. So most multi-state or multi-jurisdictional searches do not include federal criminal records. The multi-state means exactly that. It's state records. So you're not going to see in a state or a county search interstate criminal activity, crimes on federal lands, crimes involving federal funds or state funds, any sort of federal law violations, and in fact a lot of the white-collar corporate-related crimes are going to show up on those federal criminal records for the most part. So a lot of information missing when you are not requesting federal criminal records specifically as a part of your searches. Thought we should clarify the multi-state criminal databases. Those databases are typically reporting jurisdictions from state district courts. Those district courts are only the courts that are reporting electronically into some form of a database or making available for bulk purchase their records. through electronic methodologies. There are delays in reporting. There are big holes geographically. Some entire states are not reporting. In other cases, it's large number of rural jurisdictions that don't have reports issued. And in other cases, there's big gaps in time that are missing. So courts from a particular jurisdiction may go offline due to loss of funding for 6 months or a year, or maybe an entire state is working on updating their overhauling their criminal record system, and they go offline during that period. So a lot of issues like that can really impact the quality of the searching that's available. So one of the things that you can do is to really target your criminal searches beyond that broad FBI criminal search or that broad multi-state criminal search or the broad federal criminal records search. You can start to dig around in areas where somebody is known to have previously lived or known to have previously worked. One of the key pieces of this type of search, a targeted criminal search, is that you want to make sure that you're not just relying on where the person tells you that they've lived or tells you where they've worked. You actually want to tie to their Social Security number so that it's not only on the self-reported addresses or employment histories. It's a good idea to target your criminal searches into those geographic areas where both they self-report and they have some sort of indicator according to their credit records that they've lived or worked in that area. So I started to move forward, but let me say one more thing about that before we get into our example. So in the targeted criminal searches, what you start to do is you dig in around that area of residence. So for example, we know that people move a lot, they change jobs a lot, and if I work and live in Kansas City, Kansas, and then get a job and move my family over to the Kansas City, Missouri side of Kansas City, now suddenly I need to make sure that I have done criminal searches in both states, both Kansas City and both Kansas and in Missouri, and making sure that other geographic boundaries are being looked at as well. So for example, maybe I work in Kansas City, but my territory is a 6-state territory. So I am driving and traveling in all 6 of those, or flying into all 6 of those states on a monthly, weekly, regular basis. Evaluating, looking for criminal activity and record histories in each of those areas is a way that you can dig in a little bit deeper and see if you see any criminal records in those particular areas. So I thought it'd be important to provide a real example of what we're talking about, and this comes actually out of track 1. So we've not put names to it, obviously, to protect both our clients and the individuals involved, but I think it's an important example of why the type of search matters. We had a church that we've represented for a long time in the state of Georgia, and they have always run what I would consider the lower quality package, but price point is comfortable for a nonprofit organization. And that would involve the sex offender search, looking in the county of residence, verifying their Social Security number, and doing what we call the multi-state or national criminal search, multi-jurisdictional criminal search. So that was the standard package that was run. I know on this slide it doesn't reference the Social Security verification, but they did include that as a part of their package. And when we talked to them about improving the quality of their search by adding what we call a crim track, and that is a search that ties to the previous address history, so the address history that's tied to their Social Security number, and then targets each of those places where they previously lived by conducting a county search for each of those previous known addresses. In this case, we added that package, and within the first month of adding that package, we found someone on their current payroll that did have a domestic violence conviction from 4 years prior in a previous state. They hadn't known about that previous address. They hadn't known about that county of residence, and that county is not a county that electronically reports. And that was an individual who had applied for a volunteer position within the children's ministry for that church. So the quality, the point obviously is that the quality of product, the quality of search that you're doing really does matter. Now it definitely costs more up front to add that county, what we'd call a targeted county search or crim track to a package, but the value that you get out is a high value. It doesn't mean that that national criminal search is a bad product. It's a good product. It's a great top-level, broad search across the country to see if anything pops up. But that alone is not enough. You really need to dig deeper in areas where you know that person has resided or lived in order to truly protect your organization and protect your people. Now, there are other tools that you might want to implement besides the ones that we've talked about, like the CrimTrack product or a federal court search, some of those things that a lot of companies aren't currently using in their searches. A lot of companies don't currently use. But the other tools that help identify unwanted habits or conduct include looking at registries. There are sex offender registries, violent offender registries, child abuse registries, and depending on the type of position you're filling, the type of organization that you have, the appropriateness of checking those registries, will differ. But those are some specific registries that certainly can play a part in a quality decision making. Civil records is another place that you can look, and a lot of people kind of raise their eyebrow about that, but what you'll find is that a lot of behaviors are indicated by things that are filed in a civil action. Now, we're not talking about a he said, she said, or we had a breach, we had an agreement, and somebody violated the agreement, we can't come to terms, and we're having to go to court over it. That alone is not enough. It's looking into the details behind that. So temporary restraining orders involving accusations of abuse, violence, or stalking. If a court orders a temporary restraining order against an individual based on those kinds of findings, that's something to dig deeper into and evaluate before bringing them on board to take care of your children, for example. An action to recover property that's wrongfully been taken. They call it a replevins action in many states. That's a civil lawsuit. That's a civil process that you can go through to get back stolen property. So maybe it didn't rise to the level of a criminal action or criminal prosecution. The criminal prosecutors their plates are full, their budgets are slim. They can't pursue prosecution in every single situation. So some people have to go to court and recover the stolen property on their own, and that shows up on the civil side of our court record system as opposed to on the criminal side. Another kind is the action to recover damages for a breach of contract. I think when those kinds of situations exist, or those kinds of civil actions exist, digging a little deeper into that to understand the nuances, looking at the pleadings and understanding what the claims are and what the situations are, can really give you some insight into the character of a person. And then fourth, any actions alleging discrimination, harassment, etc. Now, you have to be really careful in these areas. You don't want to draw fast conclusions. Anyone can file a lawsuit and make a claim. It's how those claims are resolved need to be considered, or not resolved need to be considered. Um, so we definitely recommend that in those situations you're going to review the civil record or review the record and consider all sides, take into account any significant movements that are happening across the country which may have an influence on the civil claims that are filed. So examples of that would be the economic cycles, litigation trends. If there's a recession and there's a lot of bankruptcies, personal bankruptcies, take into account, hey, we're going to see a lot more candidates having personal bankruptcy. Let's kind of dig into the circumstances of that and understand how they got where they are, and not just reject every candidate for every position that has had some sort of a civil bankruptcy. Look at information that indicates any sort of a lesson learned, personal growth, rehabilitation, overcoming. And then, certainly you want to remember that many of the most powerful influences in a company is an employee that has been through a tough situation and has overcome that tough situation and has really gained as a result. There's a resilience factor there that really can add to your corporate culture and enhance it. So finding ways to evaluate whether you've got a resilient overcomer in front of you versus a repeat criminal offender with a way of doing life that doesn't fit with your corporate culture. So as you are digging into the facts of each of these, that's where the individualized assessment comes into play. But you definitely want to dig, and hopefully today what we've shared with you will help you understand a little bit better about the importance of digging deeper in places where it matters, digging deeper in places where a person is known to have been, and understanding that those broad brush tools are exactly that, broad brush tools, and they don't include all possible information that may be out there on someone. So with that, I'm hoping that we have done a good job of helping you understand the importance of going deeper, digging deeper, and understand the difference between that broad search and a deeper search when it comes to criminal records and criminal behaviors and criminal conduct in particular. I believe that next month we're going to be talking about the meaning of match, and match really has to do with when a database is being searched of any sort, how do you match a record to a person's name or the other identifying information that is provided to you. What can we as a client do better to help improve those matches? And what do we need to understand about matching? Searches in Google are a great example of some of the crazy stuff that can come up when you put in a few words. The same is true in a background screening. When you type in a name and you try to come up with a match using technology, you got to do some filtering and some refining to make sure that the matches you have are really quality. So the meaning of match is next month's webinar. And with that, Cynthia, I believe that we've wrapped up our presentation for the day, unless somebody's got some questions.
Well, we have a couple of questions. One question has to do with kind of balancing how deep you have to go with the FCR in light of the FCRA rules and the EEOC guidelines. And from what I understand, Nancy, that and this question kind of regards that you really need to balance and make sure that the position itself has a particular standard that it must achieve. In other words, it's working with children, and you want to make sure that they have a clean background with nothing in there that would make it concerning or onerous to have them working with children. So tell us a little bit about that whole balance of FCRA in light of really digging deep into criminal activity, Nancy.
Absolutely. So Kind of a little bit of two different issues. So Cynthia is absolutely correct. The EEOC issued criminal guidance in 2012 and has taken a really strong stance to make it clear that they definitely want employers to be doing what they refer to as an individualized assessment of an individual, and particularly when it comes to criminal records. So if you're looking at their past, you uncover criminal record of some sort, then as you're digging into that criminal record and making a decision about whether or not to hire or promote or retain that person as an employee, you need to consider a number of things, and things that you consider include the type of position that they're in, how long they've already been working for you, whether there's any proof that they've rehabilitated or overcome that problem. So there's a host of factors that they have outlined in this 2012 criminal guidance that everyone talks about, and it really, in summation, those factors force us as employers, in a good way, to individually assess each individual person and each individual criminal record that comes up in a background search about that person. And really, when we're talking about digging deeper, we are not talking about overlooking the importance of individualized assessment. The only thing that we're saying is that by digging deeper, you might uncover more criminal records or criminal past or criminal behaviors that you would then want to assess. You will still conduct an individualized assessment on each of those records that you locate. But if you don't ever locate a record, you can't conduct the individualized assessment and make a decision about whether it's a good fit or not. So the going deeper is really designed to increase the number of records or historical information that's found out about a person, and it's really it's a separate analysis from once you have those records that you've found when you went deeper. What do you do with them? Well, what you do with them is you conduct that individualized assessment.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up. And when I listen to you, Nancy, it sounds like that there is this belief, this myth that all of this information about people is all available electronically online, and that there's no gaps in information. And yet you've made it very clear that is definitely not the case. And so I presume then that part of background screening is literally picking up the phone or going into, say, courthouse records, physically in order to gather this information. Am I correct in that?
It definitely can be. And again, that's jurisdiction specific. When you are targeting a particular county in where somebody is known to have lived or worked, those county searches can involve sending a physical runner to that courthouse who goes in and pulls the courthouse record and looks through it and then sends back the information. Now, not all county courthouses have searches done that way. Many have gone electronic or are online. If they're not electronic in bulk, what they do make available is an online search, and so you can identify whether there's even a record for that person on their online systems, and then request a copy of that record as needed in order to provide the details or provide the information on the report that you need to provide. So yes, those going deeper criminal searches, the county criminal searches, definitely can and do oftentimes involve sending a live person to the courthouse.
So, Nancy, in the industry, is there any talk or with courthouses, or is there any talk of really building out these databases for online access?
There's a lot of the states that do make it available online at multiple levels. There are other states that do not. Even when they make those available online, there can be limitations or restrictions. Oklahoma is a great example of a state that has worked for 10 years to build a comprehensive online state system that it's still not built. So you have to really become familiar and know the status of criminal records in your particular area. I think that's one of the real valuable pieces to being in relationship with a background screening provider that is familiar on a state-by-state basis with the status of criminal records and criminal searches, and understands where quality searches can be conducted, where, if the vast majority of the people you're hiring come from within your state, whether you want to add or enhance your searches based on the quality of data that's available in your state, et cetera. So that can be an important part of the analysis.
Okay, well, that kind of comes to the end of our questions. I'm going to go ahead and change to the screen. And folks, be sure to join us back next month in I'm trying to think. I think it's the September 23rd, if I have it in my mind correctly, when Nancy or Matt will be back to talk about the meaning of match. So let me switch the screen back over to mine. There we go. And it would be September 23rd when the meaning of match, and we'll have track one back to talk some more about that. In the meantime, next week, I'll be presenting Have You Had Your Synergy today? This is really talking about team building, team playing, and if your team is really reaching a level of synergy. And synergy, in case you don't know, means that if you add 2 and 2 together, instead of getting 4, you're going to get 6, 8, 10. You never know with synergy, but it's an increased level of energy among a team. And then following will be the content marketing from Kenna Lewis. She's been talking about how to market your know-how, and so we'll welcome her back on that topic. And after that, we'll have Kent Stroman back, Stroman and Associates. Kent is the founder of the Institute for Conversational Fundraising, and he's going to give 5 tips on how to jumpstart your strategic plan. And just remember that you can go and join businessperformanceusa.org and watch any of our webinars. If you're a nonprofit, you'll want to pick up background screening and Kent Stroman. And social media, all of those things apply to nonprofit. If you're a for-profit, the same is true. So thanks everyone for today. And with that, go out and make it a great day. And I'm ending the webinar today. Thanks so much, Nancy.
Thank you so much, Cynthia.
Bye-bye.